No matter your age, your plan for retirement can start today. From the News Channel 5 Network, this is the Retirement Report.
Good morning. Welcome to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. With me today, my good friend and special guest, Dr. Friday, with Dr. Friday's tax and financial firm in Brentwood, Tennessee. Yay! One of the things that we're going to be talking about today, and we're going to get into a number of things, but of course, Dr. Friday and I, we work quite closely with my clients, and with her clients for that matter. We, as a team approach, bringing together our different expertises to give our clients the best service. One of the things you can look at, and this is one of the nice things, if you're working with an advisor, whether it's your tax person or a financial advisor, or, for that matter, if you have an attorney that's doing your estate planning documents. Ideally, you want that team approach. You want that team that's working together, that's bringing all those expertises together and putting together a plan that's going to work best. An example would be if you're doing estate planning, okay? One of the things we've talked about many times, how can I minimize taxes? Well, one of the ways you can do that, in particular, when we get into looking at the history of taxes, we are at historically low tax rates, all right? And so, show of hands, everybody out there, you watching, I want to see them, come on, hands up. All right, how many of you, okay, think your taxes are going to go up? Or I'll ask you another question. How many of you, in fact, think you pay too little in taxes? All right, is there anyone in the world, certainly in the United States, that feel that they pay too little in taxes and can't wait and say, please, government, charge me more. Please, Internal Revenue Service, take more of my check.
I get a lot of that. I really do.
Yeah, no. So what we want to do, in fact, is we want to minimize taxes. But one of the things that comes there, if we're at historically low tax rates, all right, we're looking at deficits. We're spending in the hundreds of millions of dollars more per year than we're taking in taxes. We're running up trillions of dollars in debt with interest on that debt increasing daily, hourly, every minute, second, right? So one of the things there, when you see that happening, at some point that's got to be paid, right? Is there any time, I mean, you're not going to see the United States go bankrupt. We don't have the opportunity for our government to go to the bankruptcy court and just tell all those people to go away, right? The creditors, the people we owe money to. So what's going to happen? How are they going to pay it? At some point in time, all right, Kirk Conrad, who is head of I think it's the Financial Services Committee. He's a senator out of, I believe it's Idaho, if I remember right. And one of the things he talked about was, the politicians' propensity to just want to kick the can down the road.
Yes.
In other words, they don't want to deal with that issue. They don't want to raise taxes and deal with the problems because that doesn't make them real popular, and they want to keep their job. All right, but the reality is we do have to deal with it, and we do have some voices in Congress and in the Senate that do tell us the truth about that, that do say we have to deal with this problem and try to make inroads in that, but again, for the majority, it's not there yet, and we have to push them to do that. Now, here's the thing. What are you doing with regard to your taxes then? If taxes are at historically low rates, we're talking about right now for a family making $50,000 a year, you're in a 15% tax bracket. Okay. Now, if we go back about to say 1990, so about 24 years ago, this was the enactment of, or not quite that long even, actually, I think it was a little after that, the enactment of the Bush tax cuts, as they were referred to. But back at 1990, prior to those cuts, which is what reduced, that created a 10% bracket. We didn't have one in 1990. In 1990, the lowest bracket was in fact 15%. And that affects everyone. So for a couple, that's about close to $18,000. You've got your, so let's run through this. That means that your standard exemptions, standard deductions, you got about a little over $20,000 for a married couple that you don't have to pay tax on. Then of the next $18,000, you're only paying 10%. So that means for approximately $40,000 in income, of adjusted 10%. Gross income, you got about $1,800 in taxes. Okay, so from a tax rate standpoint, that's about, I don't know, 5% or something, okay? So what are we looking at then historically? Your 15% bracket today, back in 1990, if you were making that, you would have been in a 28% bracket. Yep. You would have paid almost double the amount of tax you're paying today. And for everybody in that's benefiting from that 10% bracket, because everybody, that first 18,000 after your deductions and exemptions for a married couple, approximately 9,000 for a single, all right, you're only paying 10% tax on that amount. So that benefits everybody. That was like a 50% benefit on that lower end for everyone in terms of money they get to keep.
Right.
All right, so now we go back even further, back to 1980, and you would have been in a 49% tax bracket, 3 times what it is today. So again, we're at historically low tax rates. So what do you think when we see the deficits, the amount of spending going on, spending more than we're taking in tax revenue, because governments are not businesses. They don't go out there and make money. The only way they get revenue is from us, okay?
Yes.
It's from taxes. So how do we in fact protect ourselves from these rising, well, going back to that, do you expect your taxes to go up? So if taxes are at historic lows, and we just went through that about how much they were not so long ago, and we're running at deficits, we're spending more than we're taking in, so which is more likely? That Congress is going to start, that our government is going to start spending less, or that they're going to start taxing more? So in essence, taxes are on sale, aren't they? The taxes are lower today. See, when the tax policies, if you think about in retirement planning, tax deferral with regard to 401ks and IRAs, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons that these are not doing very well these days, but if you look at when the 401ks and IRAs first were enacted, and we're going back now into the 1970s with the ERISA and then the Tax Revenue Act of, I think it was 1974, if I remember right. In the enactment of this legislation, that's what brought retirement accounts into play, and that's where we had tax. Again, what did we say? You were paying 3 times the tax rate. $50,000, you were paying 49%. So if you could avoid paying taxes at that higher rate by putting money into tax-deferred accounts, so that when you retired, your income would, this was the concept, would be lower, you would pay lower taxes. And it had worked out well for those folks. Yes. But for today, for us today, when our tax rates are lower, does that still make sense? In particular, you have to look at what's your income going to be in retirement. Is it going to be comparable? And here's the other thing that was different. Back then, people had Social Security and pensions, and they could put that money in tax-deferred accounts. A lot of times they never even touched it. They just left it to their kids. Okay, today, however, we don't have, it's a shrinking world of pensions out there. Most of us don't have pensions, and those that do, the pensions are much smaller than what our parents and grandparents had, and not enough for us to actually live on. So we're going to have to pull money out of those retirement accounts, and we're going to have to pay taxes at that time. It's going to get added to our taxable income, potentially pushing us into higher brackets. So the point of all that is that instead of us paying, we may in fact be putting away money in tax-deferred accounts to save less in taxes and end up paying more in taxes when we take the money out.
Right.
So what is one of the solutions to that?
Move it before you retire.
So one of the things that we talk about, of course, with our clients are Roth conversions. Okay, with a Roth conversion, I can either put money into a Roth instead of traditional. Right. For many of us, we can do both. We can have some going in tax deferred and some going into tax free. So it gives us some control, and this is where doing a tax analysis of the retirement comes in, okay, of your retirement plans. How much would be appropriate to put in? I met with a gentleman just yesterday, as a matter of fact, and this is a guy he's works for the federal government, it's also National Guard. His income, because of his pensions and the amount that he's going to need to live on, is basically not really going to change much when he retires.
That's typical to a point. I mean, a lot of people, that is the problem, because they still have mortgages. They still have the debt that they had when they were working. I mean, it used to be our grandparents, in some cases even parents, you might have been lucky enough where the mortgages were paid off, so they really didn't have that kind of overhead. But I think most of the people in our generation, or mine and yours, were in different generations.
Studies show that about 30% of people retire with mortgages today.
There you go.
Okay, well, not compared to anything. That's just the fact. 30% of people are retiring with mortgages, meaning 70% have paid off their mortgages. But still, your standard of living, your quality of life, a lot of times as you get older, kind of goes up. Maybe you've got more medical expenses or other things. Plus, when you're able to retire, you're going to have more time. You're going to probably want to go do some
Build
things.
that pool house.
So we don't typically see, there's one example, you don't typically see that your income needs are going to go down in retirement. If anything, initially, they may even go up. And so how do you plan on, again, we're going to talk more about the Roth conversion, about maybe putting money into tax-free accounts for retirement and some of the benefits of that, and the real importance of having an appropriate, and it's so important not to just go out and just do it haphazardly. There again, if we do it right, we can minimize taxes while we're doing it. So we're going to get into that and how you can do it when we come back. Join us here on the Retirement Report.
Good point.